Hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webcast. My name is Andrew Barber, and I'm a senior contributing editor here at eSchool News. And I'm delighted that you could join us for today's presentation, which is sponsored by Aruba. And over the next hour, we're going to dive into a discussion about the federal E-rate program. And more specifically, we're going to take a look at why 2019 might be a good year to apply for the program and what potential changes are coming down the pike in 2020 in the program. But before we get started, let me just take a few moments to discuss a couple of things about this console that you're looking at today. First, we are recording the event, so in a couple of days, we'll send out an email to everyone that will contain a link to the recorded event, and you'll also be able to download a PDF of the presentation from the same email. And second, please ask questions. Don't feel as if you have to wait until the end. At any point during the presentation, if you have a question, just type it into the Q&A box on your console and hit the submit button. And I think we should have probably about 15 minutes or so at the end when our speakers can address your questions. And we also have a chat function, which you can launch. If you look down at the bottom of your screen at the black toolbar, there is a blue group chat icon down there. Click on that, and you can use chat to talk among yourselves or to contact me or the eSchool News team if you have any technical issues or anything like that. But I do have one favor to ask of you. Please don't use the chat function to ask our panelists questions. They're not going to have time during their presentations to monitor those chats. So if you have a question for them, please use the Q&A panel instead. And with that out of the way, let me introduce you to today's guests. John Harrington is the CEO of Funds for Learning. That's a consulting firm that specializes in the E-rate funding program. And John has been helping schools and libraries receive E-rate discounts for more than 20 years. And in fact, he and his team have prepared some 14,000 applications totaling worth more than $1.7 billion. And before we turn things over to John, though, we're first going to hear from Dan Rivera. He's a senior portfolio marketing manager at Aruba. And Dan has 29 years of experience as an education technology specialist. And he served as an African consultant, service provider, and manufacturer since the inception of the Universal Service Fund. So Dan offers a unique perspective into the E-rate program. Now, I've been looking at the list of attendees as you all were joining, and I see we have educators from across the educational spectrum with us today. But I do want to take a moment just to get a sense of how important the E-rate funding program is to all of you in achieving your district priorities. So if you would just take a moment to just answer one of those three options there, very important, somewhat important, or not important at all, it'll give us an idea of where we stand as an audience as we talk about the program. So assuming that you've had a chance to do that, we will now look at the results. And as you might expect, it's no surprise that, considering that you all did dial in here today, that you find it very important in your district. And it's a reflection, I think, of the growing importance of technology in every aspect of education today. But for a deeper dive into what's driving the need for these funds, I'm going to hand things over now to Dan Rivera. Welcome, Dan. It's great to have you back here at eSchool News.
And thank you, Andrew, and I appreciate that welcome, that introduction, and thank you all for being with us as well. And as Andrew has stated, there are certainly many drivers for the need for additional funding, and obviously that additional funding coming through programs like E-rate. So we're going to take a quick second just to talk about what is top of mind. What are those drivers that are really pushing within K-12 the need to expand their networks and to look to funding to help achieve that. So really we break it down into two different areas and areas of concern, and this should resonate well within your institution as well. But from an institutional perspective, and these are folks like your superintendent, your assistant superintendent, your school board members. At that level, really top of mind is how do we support this transformational learning? So we have seen the push from the old way of learning, right, with the teacher, textbook, paper, and pencil, moving into more of a 21st century collaborative learning environment, and we're transitioning all of the learning curriculum, the learning tools to a digital platform. And in fact, based on surveys that have been done over the last few years, we've seen mobile learning continue to rise to the top 3 concerns for the institutional concerns within a school or school system. Obviously, that has to show that there is student success tied to that, right? What is top of mind is how do we achieve that student success? How do we improve it and continue to expand it? Transformational learning is certainly one of those areas, how they can continue to improve that student success, and doing this in a safe and secure environment. And when we talk about security and safety from an institutional perspective, it really is more of the physical safety and security of the teachers, staff, faculty, and students. And then as we shift over to what IT and applications kind of top of mind for those specific departments, it's all about pervasive Wi-Fi. And in the past, we had maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, when you were looking at implementing wireless into the school campus, the concern was, I just need coverage. I just need to be able to see an access point wherever I am on campus. And that was really, that met the needs of the time. And when there wasn't as large of a shift into this new way of learning. But as we have shifted into this mobile-first learning environment, having coverage isn't enough. What do we need now? We need capacity, and that's capacity of the wireless network as well as back to the wired network. We have all types of devices coming onto the network through mobile and wired points of entry. So whether it be tablets, smartphones, PCs, laptops, to some of these new IoT devices like Internet of Things coming in, where it's not just smart lighting or access control, but it's things like smart trash cans or even smart vending machines. In fact, as we'll see in the next slide, IoT is continuing to grow specifically within education. So it's all about having that network capacity that is capable of supporting all of these new devices coming onto the network, and doing that in such a way that it's secure. We know that cybersecurity is absolutely a top priority within K-12. We know that the FBI partnered up with the Department of Education earlier this year to release what's known as a private industry notification. They did a joint notification with the Department of Education, letting school districts in the United States know that there are bad actors, known bad actors, who are specifically targeting schools to breach their data. So in that private industry notification, they actually named the dark overlords, and that came out in January of this year. But what you may have missed, if you follow that, in August, just about 45 days ago, they released another private industry notification to schools saying, don't forget, you are still under attack. There are still bad actors who are specifically targeting data of students for their private identifiable information, as well as things above and beyond just their social security number, but also their medical records and things like that also reside on that school network. So cybersecurity should absolutely continue to be top of mind within education. Some of the trends that we're seeing as we're making this shift, there's a study done, and this is study results from groups like COSIN, the Coalition of School Networking, or Gartner, or other industry analysts, including our own internal surveys that we do at Aruba. We found that 97% of K-12 IT leaders expect that either some or most of their print instructional materials will be replaced by digital instructional materials within the next 3 years. In fact, within that same study, they found that over 50% of all schools had already transitioned at least some of their print instructional materials to digital, with a small minority that have all of their materials done digitally. So we see that continuing to shift, and that's going to, again, drive more and more demand onto that network. And as I said, when we talk about IoT, another trend that's happening, 82% of K-12 professionals expect that schools will have incorporated IoT devices into core functional areas within the next 5 years. And we see that actually it's going to compress and happen a little bit quicker as more and more of these IoT devices come out, as the value proposition for these IoT devices continue. I think we're going to see schools continue to adopt that. And what we mean by core functional areas, we're talking about your physical access control, your lighting, your HVAC control systems, and things like that. So as you bring these on to those networks, hopefully what you're seeing is the need for securing those IoT devices, because many of these IoT devices coming out, security is often an add-on or a bolt-on to the functionality. Rather than starting with the premise of a secure device, they start with the premise of how would we use this device to enable certain features, and then, oh yeah, let's put a security feature on top of it to try and protect it. And we see those fail quite often. You've seen in the news some large institutions have been compromised because of some of these IoT devices, including things like a smart thermometer that was on a fish tank. So you'll never know where those attacks come from, but we can see as these IoT devices continue to come in, really does drive the need to have a good cybersecurity plan, which kind of leads us into the next trend, which to me is quite surprising. 97% of K-12 CIOs expect an increase in cybersecurity threats. Now, I'd like to meet those other 3% that don't expect an increase, because I think everyone here on this call would agree the network continually it comes under attack, and I think we're going to see an increase in cybersecurity threats across every single network on the school campuses, whether it's internal actors or external actors. So when we talk about Aruba, I do want to mention, certainly we are sponsoring this, so I can't let you go without talking about some of the use cases for the Aruba solutions within the campus, where we really kind of divide up into what I would say 4 different areas, which is providing Wi-Fi that works. And this is having that always-on reliability and secure guest access, really to support things like one-to-one initiatives, bring your own device initiatives, as well as online assessments, right? Always on reliability to make sure that your students can access those online assessments, because the majority of the access is going to be done over the wireless network. So it's all about having that Wi-Fi that works. And not only that, it's about providing an intelligent wired network. So it goes beyond just the wireless, but also down to the wire. And really, we provide solutions that help simplify IT operations with the integration of automated and intelligence built into the network switches, and then also be able to provide that high density connectivity. So one of the things that I was really surprised in learning is that almost a majority, so just under half, sorry, not almost a majority, but just under half of all IoT devices were actually going to be wired onto the network. So that's really driving the need for a lot more of those ports as well. As we used to say, there's a lot of wire and wireless, right? And bringing up to the next section, it's all about doing it in a secure way. So really driving that network security. At Aruba, we have a lot of tools and resources, software applications that help drive visibility and control of the network, as well as provide automated response, and also driving that IoT protection, right? How to classify IoT devices, how to fingerprint them, and how to continue to monitor them. So if you have an IoT device that you had put in that's a irrigation control sensor, and it starts acting like a server, attacking your point of sales or attacking your student information systems, the network will detect it, quarantine it, and alert it. So really providing that kind of network security that you need as you're bringing in all these devices onto that network. And of course, providing an enhanced learning experience. And I don't get too much time to talk about this because, quite frankly, when we talk about security or enhanced learning experiences, these types of things are traditionally not E-rate eligible. So this would all be done outside of E-rate, but it is part of the overall ecosystem within the network. So if you're, I would really encourage you to take a look at some of the things you can do with what we call our Meridian location-based services system, which takes advantage of Bluetooth Low Energy beacons that are built into all new Aruba access points, as well as some other external beacons that you can buy and place throughout the campus. What this does is it provides traditional wayfinding, right? So you have that blue dot indoor navigation wayfinding, but it also gives you the ability to enhance that learning experience, to increase education time or instructional time in the classroom by doing things like automated attendance, where attendance is taken by students simply walking in to the classroom, as well as providing a way to do location-activated learning. So a student would have access to certain tools and resources depending on where they're at within the campus. So some exciting things you can do when you can take the intelligence of the location of the user and combine that with curriculum and instruction. So great things that you can do there. I will say that not all of these services are eligible, and we break it down to kind of two areas from an Aruba solution standpoint. We have our E-rate eligible solutions and our not eligible solutions. And this eligibility is actually based off of the draft eligible services list for funding year 2019. The final eligible services list has not yet come out. We anticipate that to come out very, very soon. The FCC has typically released those within September or October of the prior year to that funding year. So we do expect that eligible services list to come out very, very soon. But based on the draft, we break it down into a couple of areas. So within that eligible services list, you'll see two categories of service, Category 1 and Category 2. The Aruba solutions will often be classified as a Category 2 product. And within that Category 2, there's subsections. You have internal connections, you have managed internal broadband services, and basic maintenance of internal connections, which is really your support. So from an Aruba standpoint, our access control switches are really all of our infrastructure products. So access control switches, our core and aggregation switches, including the new 8300 and 8400 switches. Core switches are eligible, as well as our access points and controllers, and then some of our other features like cloud-based management through Central. As well as our Mobility Master and AOS 8 for that controller campus-based wireless solution. Another area where you have some of our products that are eligible would fall under Managed Internal Broadband Services, and this is really where you would come into that networking as a service, where you're paying an annual fee, not buying the hardware outright, but having that as part of a complete managed service where you can lease the hardware or you can buy the services to help manage that network. So I won't go through all the list of products and services that we have there. This will be for your reference. And of course, as we move to the not eligible, these are things like the products that we provide for advanced security or analytics management location-based services. So ClearPass, which will help control your IoT and authentication, not eligible. Airwave, which is your network management that does Aruba as well as third-party network management, would not be eligible. Introspect is a newer product of Aruba. That's actually a really exciting advanced secure product that actually looks at the users and the entity's behavior, analyzes it, and will flag it for any kind of anomalies. If you have someone who traditionally comes in and has a baseline of data that they traditionally use, but one particular day that data triples or quadruples, or they start accessing services that they don't traditionally access, you would get an alert. So it really does track the behavior of the user or the entity. It's a great tool called Introspect that is not eligible. And then other things like NetInsight, which provides that automated intelligence and network analytics would not be eligible, nor would that Meridian system, which provides those location-based services that we talked about for enhanced security. But like I said, this is all based on the funding year 2019 draft eligible services list. We do anticipate that the final eligible services list will be released, and we really don't see or expect a whole lot to change. But I'd love to bring in John Harrington from Funds for Learning to get your opinion on that, and then also to really kind of tell us what's happening within education. What can we expect? What do we know? And John, I'd welcome your thoughts here. Welcome in.
Hey, Dan. Thank you very much. And want to, first of all, just thank you and Aruba for providing this platform today to have a very timely discussion. And I do have one correction for you on this slide, though. It says E-rate eligible and not eligible. I would change that to should be eligible. You know, the fact that these types of functions, you know, your ClearPass and Airwave, you know, that functionality to me are things that are becoming quickly a requirement. And so I don't expect those to be eligible this year on that draft list that you mentioned, but I really hope that in the future they are, because they should be eligible, because, you know, these are the types of functions and services really that are empowering the network. So I'm going to sort of a springboard now off of what Dan was talking about. I thought it was really interesting to hear his explanation of how the networks have transformed and how we've gone from thinking about coverage to capacity. And in a very similar way, I've seen in the E-rate field and the E-rate applications a real shift in the thinking that schools and libraries have as it relates to funding projects. There was a time when schools looked for funding in their technology bonds, for example, or they would be looking at grants and other one-time sources to fuel their technology initiatives. And slowly but steadily, I've watched as school districts have embraced the reality that these technology tools and resources are not one-time, one-and-done sort of moments, but they are a new paradigm, a new way of functioning as a school district or as a library system. And with that, that shift has come this increased reliance on the E-rate program, because it is a steady source of funding. It is something that you can look to year after year. It's not as it doesn't operate like a 20-year technology bond or even a grant that may come or go occasionally. It's a consistent source of funding. It certainly has some limitations and frustrations associated with it, but it's a very consistent source of funding to provide that technology now to grow that capacity on campuses. And what I'd like to do is talk to you all a little bit about what we're seeing in the technology space as it relates to the E-rate program and the Category 2 discounts that are for on-campus connections. Dan's already really set this slide up for me. We Funds for Learning each year conduct a survey of applicants nationwide. Our consultancy serves schools and libraries in, I think, 36 states. We work with a lot of schools and libraries, but we sort of cast the net even wider, and we ask the entire E-rate community to provide us feedback about their plans, their ideas, how well the E-rate program is functioning, and so on. And one of the questions we asked them this past spring was, when do you plan to upgrade your Wi-Fi network? And you can see we gave, first of all, the option for within a year, or another was 1 to 3 years, and then beyond. 64% of respondents, and there was over 1,000 respondents representing about 5% of all E-rate applicants, said that they plan to upgrade that Wi-Fi within 3 years, either within a year or within 1 to 3 years. That's a tremendous number when you think about it. First of all, it says very loudly and clearly the state of education technology and how absolutely essential it is for those connections to be there and for the adequate capacity to be there. It's astounding when you think about all the work that's been done the last 5 or 10 years to get schools connected, and that 64% plan to upgrade their Wi-Fi in the next 3 years is quite a remarkable statistic. I believe it. I see it anecdotally all the time. This exponential growth of demand for broadband and schools scrambling, racing to try to stay ahead of that. In the same survey, we asked schools to let us know how important is E-rate funding to you. And you can see 88% said that E-rate is vital to their connectivity goals. That 82% said E-rate is helping to ensure that they have affordable access to broadband, and 80% said they have faster internet because of the E-rate. 78% said we connect more users to the internet because of the E-rate program. Clearly, we see it in the data, we see it in our own experience. Schools have a tremendous need, and they are turning to the E-rate program to help them get those networks into place. This chart shows you historically what we've seen since 2015. You might recall the 2015 funding year is when the E-rate program was overhauled. We'd had a couple of years where there was no money available for those on-campus projects, what we refer to as Category 2, the wireless access points, the switches, the routers, and so on. There was no funding for those. The FCC, who regulates the program, overhauled it. They made sure that there was now funding for on-campus Category 2 projects. And this is what the demand has looked like. That first light blue bar is Category 1 services. That's internet access, data circuits, the goods or the services that bring connections to the front door of a school building, if you will. And then that middle column, the dark blue, represents the overall spending through the E-rate program for Category 2 discounts, switches and so on. You can see there was quite a bit of bottled up demand in 2015, since there had been several years without any funding. So there was $1.9 billion worth of projects. And that dollar amount represents both the E-rate discount portion and the portion paid by the applicants. So there was $1.9 billion in 2016, another $1.5 billion worth of infrastructure projects. And then for the past 2 years, it's been right around the same level, about $1.2 billion a year. When the FCC sort of sized the E-rate program, it was with the idea of, they thought they would be spending about $1 billion a year on Category 2 projects. And it's sort of been in that range. I expect that in 2019, for a variety of reasons, that number will climb up higher because we are reaching the end of an initial 5-year period for the Category 2 discounts that were initiated as a part of that reform. This graph just kind of gives you a sense overall of what's taking place across the country. I think sometimes for an individual applicant with their individual application, it's hard to really understand the context, which way the winds are blowing and what's taking place. This diagram illustrates the number of school and library sites nationwide that are benefiting from the E-rate program in each of the past 4 funding years. So back in 2015, there were 129,710 school or library facilities that were receiving a discounted Category 1 service. Again, that's internet access. There was 126,250 sites that were receiving discounts for telephone service. And in that funding year, there were 54,116 sites that had applications for Category 2 discounts. And the big story here on this chart is the Category 1 internet access. The number of sites has remained basically flat, about the same. Voice services is being phased out of the program, so you can see that decline, and that's really driven by the regulations. That has been one of the challenges for some school districts because they have lost the discounts that they were typically receiving on their phone bill that many times were used to help or leveraged to help pay for their Category 2 projects. So the voice services has now been declining. 2019 will be the first year in which there are no discounts for telephone service whatsoever. So you might make note of that for your upcoming E-rate application. And then the number of sites receiving Category 2 discounts sort of corresponds to those dollars we saw on the previous slide. About 55,000, and now it's sort of leveled down to 46, 44,000. So about 45,000, let's say, 45 to 50,000 sites each year that are receiving Category 2 discounts on campus. And that is limited by a couple of factors. Obviously, the E-rate, the amount of funding available through the E-rate program, also just the capacity of schools to manage those projects. Those types of infrastructure upgrades typically require many resources, not just financial, and there's just a natural limit to how many sites a school district can take on in any given year. So it's not unusual. I'm not surprised to see that about a third of the sites are receiving discounts in any particular year. This site shows, or I'm sorry, this diagram shows you the total number of sites that have received discounts for Category 2 funds, going back again to the 2015 reform. In 2018, we stand at 99,132 sites of a current 129,000 and change sites that are in the program have received the benefits of some Category 2 discounts. That is a huge success story. That means that over 99,000 sites have benefited from these Category 2 discounts over the course of the past 4 years. And it also shows that there are 30,000 sites out there that have not at all benefited from Category 2 funds, that their particular site has not been listed on an application yet for whatever reason. This chart is very, very important. It's probably the most important chart I'm going to show you today. It's also perhaps the most confusing chart, but I'm going to take a moment to walk you through it, and I think you'll understand why. The bars on this chart are telling us how much money is left at school or library sites that have used a certain portion of their Category 2 discounts. So remember, Category 2 discounts, those budgets, those discounts are capped based on the number of students at a facility, a school site, or the square footage of a library facility. And there are, on the far left, you'll see there's a little over $800 million. It's actually close to $900 million in potential discounts at sites that have not yet applied for any E-rate discounts. So that would be those 30,000 sites that I said haven't applied for any Category 2 discounts. The maximum amount of funding that they could receive is about $900 million. You go over to the next column there, and there are over $1 billion in funds associated with sites that have just done a little work. They've used up between 1% and 24% of their Category 2 budget, and so they've maybe done a small upgrade, or they've done some work at a centralized facility that serves that location, but really they have not yet begun to fully tap that Category 2 budget. If you add all those up, you'll see it adds up to $1.95 billion, close to $2 billion that are available in 2019 for Category 2 funds. And there are a total of over close to 41,000 sites that fall into those categories of either having not used at all their Category 2 discounts, or maybe they've used them somewhat. So there's $2 billion right now out there available for sites that need it, to the extent that they have need, there's a lot of money out there. And again, anecdotally, what I see is a lot of sites that actually need that support. Okay, sorry. One of the challenges that applicants face is the regulations themselves. So, one question you might say is, well, you just told me there's $2 billion out there at certain sites. Why isn't everyone applying for those? Why is there any money left on the table? The regulations are a big part of that equation. In that same survey that we conducted in 2018, we asked the question, how much money do you need to fund all of your Category 2 needs? And we have asked that question now for 4 years in a row. This chart illustrates the response that we've received. And it shows you of the 4 options that we provided applicants, where they fell. So we told them, we asked, is where it's at today sufficient, or which is around $150 per student, or should it be $250, $350, or more than $350 per student? And the clear winner consistently for the past 4 years has been $250 per student. So it's about $100 more per student than is currently available. You can see the last 2 years that number has been 45% of respondents. I can also tell you anecdotally that many of the applicants that Funds for Learning works with, we see projects come in and there is data wiring and network electronics, and the two of those together oftentimes come up very close to this number, around $250 per student. The application process requires that any overage over that budget cap be removed from the application. And oftentimes we'll see a good 30 or 40% of the project deleted, taken off, and to get to that $150 per student budget cap. One of your homework assignments today is to make sure that you understand what your Category 2 budgets look like within your school district or library system. Are all of your sites at that 100% utilization level, or do you have some that haven't been touched at all, or somewhere in between? And whether or not you intend to pursue Category 2 discounts, that's a local decision. There's a lot of factors that go into that. I would suggest that any E-rate coordinator, any staff with responsibility for the E-rate program should be able to answer that question. What is the status of the Category 2 budgets at each of our sites, each of our school facilities, and where is that, and do we have plans to make use of that funding in 2019? If you don't know where that is, you don't know where that number is, you're welcome to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to try to get you that number. But it's very important that you know exactly where that's at, because again, it's just money that's available to help really propel your school district forward. One of the reasons that this per student dollar amount is critical is not only the amount of money that it provides, but also because it sets a ceiling on a project. In some cases, we see school districts opt not to apply for E-rate funds. We can debate whether that's right or wrong, depending upon the dollar amount for facility, but we do see in some cases schools that don't apply because of where the budget is today. And if the budget was higher, they might actually go ahead and submit that application. We asked in our 2017 survey, which again about 5% of applicants, if they weren't applying for Category 2 at a particular location, why was that? And there are a number of responses. 35% of those that didn't apply for it said that they didn't intend to apply for Category 2. In my experience, most of those are unaware of the opportunity. They think that perhaps they don't qualify for it. Another 21% said that they'd already used up their budgets, which is fantastic. Another 21% though just said that it was just too difficult. Now you might say, well, that sounds like someone saying, well, it's just kind of hard, I don't want to do it. When they say it's too difficult, in some cases it's almost impossible. There have been many challenges, well-documented challenges associated with the online application tool, and in some cases it's just nearly impossible to get that application in. So 21% of the applicants in 2017 who didn't apply for Category 2, it's simply because it was just too hard. Another 16% said that there wasn't enough money left in that C2 budget to justify the work. So maybe they'd used 90% of a budget at a particular site, and there was $500 or $1,000 sitting there. They didn't want to take 12 months and a huge application to try to get that last little bit of money when they know that they have work that needs to take place right now, and they don't want to tie it up waiting for an application to be funded. Another limiter for Category 2 discounts has to do with that eligible services list that Dan was talking about earlier. We asked applicants to, what changes would they make to the eligible services list? The number one response was voice services. I think adding voice over IP either as a service or the equipment is a big need for school districts as they're trying to move to voice over IP based networks. But right behind that, the second highest, filtering and security, 14% would love to see that on the eligible services list. As we talked about earlier, it is currently not eligible, and we don't expect it to be that way for the coming 2019 funding year, but our hope is that in outline years, in 2020 and later, that some of those other services that are mission critical will be brought into the E-rate fold. So I'd like to ask a quick question for you. Where are you in the use of your Category 2 discounts? How would you describe your school district's work? Mission accomplished. We've maxed out our C2 budgets. A work in progress. We've used some of our C2 budgets. Getting started. We've applied for C2 funds, but not very much. Or nothing. We've not yet applied for any Category 2 discounts. Where would you fall on that spectrum? Again, mission accomplished, a work in progress, getting started, or nothing. Okay, well let's see what you all said. 16% mission accomplished, 59% a work in progress, and 25% nothing. We've not yet applied for any Category 2 discounts. Well, that is a very interesting cross-section because it's really quite similar to some of the statistical data that we've gathered. So, well done. You're doing a good job. I want to first of all encourage those of you who have not applied that this really is the year to apply for Category 2 discounts if you've not done so. And for those of you that it's a work in progress, I encourage you to just carry on, continue the charge. It's important work. So let's talk about 2019 and why I think it's so important to submit a Category 2 application in 2019. As we've said, you can expect no major changes to the eligible services list this coming year. There are pluses and minuses to that fact. The plus is we basically know what's going to be eligible, and you don't need to wait around to plan that procurement. So whenever that eligible services list comes out, it could be sometime in November, it could be even in December. But you don't have to wait for that. You have a very good idea of what today will qualify for E-rate discounts next year. Also, you can expect change. When the program was reformed back in 2015, it had sort of a expiration date for that reform as it relates to Category 2 discounts. 2019 is the last year of the current Category 2 system. We don't know what really will be out there in the future, but we do know what exists today. So there is a great opportunity to use those remaining Category 2 budgets, whether you've never touched it at all or whether you are sort of rounding out the portfolio. 2019 is a tremendous opportunity. We know that 64% of applicants say they need to upgrade their Wi-Fi in the within the next 3 years. There are literally billions of dollars available out there for the 2019 E-rate funding cycle, and we don't know what the future has in store for it. I will also remind and encourage you that the E-rate funding year for on-campus projects for Category 2 starts in June. So for the 2019 cycle, the application that applicants are just now beginning to prepare, that is for goods and services delivered from July 1st, 2019 through September 30th of 2020. The question then you should be asking yourself is, what does the demand look like for Wi-Fi on our campuses in the fall of 2020, 2 years from now? Get your best crystal ball out and ask yourself that question. And that is really where this next E-rate application that you submit should be building towards, is the fall of 2020. That's the deadline to use those Category 2 discounts, especially given the fact that we don't know what 2020 has in store for us. Taking advantage of that opportunity to get those devices, that network infrastructure on campus with the 2019 E-rate discounts, I think will be really important. A few other things you can expect in 2019, the online portal, the EPC system, you can expect to see kind of tweaks, enhancements. They are sticking with that system for the foreseeable future, but it's not going to be much better, but a little better, but it will also be what you're used to if you have been using that EPC system in the past. You can also expect an E-rate funding commitment earlier than last year. USAC has been really putting an emphasis on getting funding commitments out the door faster, and we expect that Category 2 projects will be funded faster in 2019 than they were in 2018. And 2018 was a huge improvement over the previous year. So I expect that you should have success getting a funding commitment faster for your Category 2 projects. And with that, I'm going to open the floor for any questions, and I'll invite Dan to join me, and we'll see if there's any questions.
All right. Well, thank you so much, John. And we do have some questions that have come in from the audience, and so let's take some time to walk through a couple of those. And for those of you who still have questions, you just simply type it into that Q&A panel on your console and hit the submit button, and we will take it from there. John, a question came in from Jeff, who is looking to see whether there's an update on the May 2018 change in the gift rule. And he said that's the part about not allowing on-site demos or schools to evaluate equipment. Do you have anything that you can update on that?
Yeah, so this is to me, this is a very normal kind of E-rate issue that pops up. It seems like almost every year there's some concern that kind of gets amplified and then it just kind of spreads quickly. And this year there has been concerns about the use of demo equipment, and just so everyone's familiar with what we're talking about. Let's say you are working, you're talking to potential vendors and you're wanting to evaluate different types of equipment, and really you want to put that device into a production type environment. Actually put it on your network, sort of take it for a test drive and see how it performs. And this is a fairly common practice. There have been concerns raised in the past, questions. Hey, does this constitute some sort of gift? If someone left behind a piece of equipment for 5 years to test drive, obviously at that point it becomes not a test drive, but really just a device on your network, and that would be a gift. The FCC has not issued any changes to any of its orders. There have been no new rulings. I think this concern has come up from a couple of questions and a couple of poorly worded responses, really from USAC. But just in our own discussions, really with the FCC, even this week, I was in Washington, D.C., and there have been no changes, no rulings to where things stand today. So there are specific language that I could point someone to. If you want to follow up with me, my email address is jharrington@fundsforlearning.com. But there hasn't been a change, and I'm not particularly concerned about it. I think that there is a very good common sense argument to be made for schools being able to evaluate the equipment, and so, but I'm not concerned about it. And again, there's been no official wording. The source of that is all unofficial kind of email communication and some phone calls, but nothing has changed officially, and I'm not too worried about it.
Okay.
There you go.
All right, thanks. Another question, you did talk about how 2020 is sort of the a point at which the existing program, the way it was structured, is a sort of a break point at 2020. So maybe you could talk a little bit, or just maybe even rehash what you said before about what the impact is going to be for some schools. So if, for instance, a school receives Category 2 discounts for the first time in 2019, will its budget then carry over into 2020?
That's a fantastic question, Andrew. It's most likely that 5-year period that began in 2015 goes through 2019 will be it for the current Category 2 budget system. The FCC has not entirely clarified the position. There's a couple of seemingly sort of contradictory opinions they've released. The most conservative approach, though, to take is to assume that those Category 2 budgets end in 2019. So therefore, even if you apply for it the first time in 2019, instead of having 5 years to use that Category 2 discount up, you really have 1 year. And most likely there will be a new program in 2020 to manage Category 2 discounts, and they will reset the play clock on all the discounts. So if you're sitting at a site that you've not used Category 2 discounts before, you should just go ahead and plan on sort of approach it with the mindset that you've got one bite at the apple now in 2019, and to really take as big a bite as you can manage, as you have need for, but really to look at this as a one-time opportunity now in 2019.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, Andrew, if you don't mind, just kind of adding to what John was saying, I would encourage all applicants as well to make sure that you do apply for any of those outstanding funds that you have in 2019, because in 2020, we know that, and I'll ask you, John, to correct me if I'm wrong, but if the program does change, and there's a new budget available. Now all those schools that had the opportunity in 2019, when they go to apply in 2020, they're going to be competing with the rest of the schools that have already exhausted their budgets over, really over $3 billion worth over the last couple of years, including those from 2015, which is going to be over $2 billion. So instead of having to compete in 2020 for those as part of those other schools who are going to be reapplying, it is good to get that bite at the apple in 2019. And then the same goes and still holds true if they just repeat the program the same way it is, even if they extended or carried through that rollover process, right, the 5-year rolling budget. You're still going to be competing with those schools that applied in 2015. There's worse if they completely scrap the program, right? Yeah.
Yeah, anything could happen. And when you look at the list of, of likely outcomes and downsides and upsides, there's no downside to applying in 2019. Again, those are projects you could wait as long as 2020 to actually deploy that equipment. We simply do not know what the future holds. And, in Washington, D.C., anything can happen. We expect that the Category 2 system will still be there. There seems to be strong support for it, but we don't know how they'll handle it, how they'll reset things. There's just a lot of question marks, as you said, and there are many sites that they have maxed out. There's just over 20,000 sites that have utilized all those Category 2 discounts. They did so early on. We expect they'll be coming back. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand in 2020, and it just makes a lot of sense to apply in the 2019 funding year with the understanding that you'll have both 2019 and into the 2020 calendar year to actually utilize those Category 2 discounts.
Okay. All right, John, I just follow up with something that you slide that you had, which was quite shocking to me actually, which was the amount of money that is being left on the table by schools that are not applying for the funds. And you mentioned, regulation and the difficulty of filling out and applying for the funds as being one of the things. As you talk to schools and administrators, what kind of advice can you give them to make sure that they are set up to be in a position to apply for these funds and do it in a way that they will get them and will not fall by the wayside because of various difficulties or challenges? Do you see a particular structure or system that works well?
I think that the number one issue to understand is this is a leadership issue. Really, the use of technology is a leadership issue. So it starts at the very top of the organization, the school board, the superintendent or CEO, recognizing the importance of getting these technologies in place. So that's the first hurdle, and then getting over the fear of applying. Sometimes there are applicants that have not done things correctly. They've been denied funding. They've had to pay money back, and there is a very understandable concern. Hey, we don't want to mess this thing up. But when you consider the stakes, when you think about the fact that student lives are what's truly at risk here, then I think it helps level that playing field a bit. And going into this application cycle with eyes open, understanding this is a federal program. There are regulations, potential penalties and fines if we don't do this right. That's a cost of doing business, and we need this technology and we need this equipment in our schools or in our libraries. The need for professional assistance is profound. The program is not simple. This past application cycle, 66% of applications were prepared by third-party professionals. I would encourage applicants, to the extent that either they're scared, confused, frustrated, not sure, there is an association for E-rate professionals. It's called the E-rate Management Professionals Association. Just Google that, you'll find it. And it is a group of consultants, about 24 different consulting firms actually, that operate with a shared code of ethics and code of conduct, operate under actually certifications and training requirements that are designed, intended to give applicants assurance that they're working with someone reputable. And over a third of the funds in 2018 were prepared by IMPA qualified organizations. So it's not for the faint of heart, these applications, these deadlines, but when you're talking about hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars that you can bring into your school district, the fact that there's some risk and that it's not easy, that doesn't cut it. And if you need to go outside and get professional help, there are avenues to do that, and there are trusted avenues. Again, that association being one, and then also just reaching out to the state E-rate coordinator. Each state has a designated state E-rate coordinator. They will be able to point an applicant in the direction of good resources, or even to help them get in touch with a qualified consultant that might be able to help them.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, John. That's probably the last question that we can field, because Dan, I know you did want to finish with a couple of closing comments, so why don't I hand things back over to you?
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you again, John, for the incredible information. I do want to leave some links for you to bookmark. There's several different links we can go through, so if you're not familiar with how much funding your school or entity has, USAC has a Category 2 budget lookup tool, so you can go onto this website, enter in your information. It'll tell you exactly how much Category 2 budget you do have available. Also, if you're interested in what services or what eligible services are, there's a link to the E-rate eligible services list. And specifically, if you have aruba products that you want to check the eligibility on, We have an E-rate eligibility tool listed there at arubanetworks.com/E-rate-tool. And of course, for more information about Funds for Learning or to get in contact with John or any of his associates, you can go through www.fundsforlearning.com. And just so you know that you're not alone, Aruba has a Airheads K-12 community. We have just about 70,000 community members, and this is a free and open community where you discuss technology, you can discuss what's happening with initiatives. We do have a specific K-12 community on there as well, so feel free to check that out. It's at community.arubanetworks.com. That is our Airheads community. It is free to join, lots of great information and resources there for you to see. And then also, I would love to let you know about a promotion we have with Aruba Central, which is our cloud-based controlling system. So it'll cloud-based control for your Aruba access points and Aruba switches. We do have a 5-year bundle at a very aggressive price, so there's some information on that as well as in the links beyond that. I do want to say if you have any questions on E-rate, you can reach out to John or you can reach out to me and our team at erate@hpe.com. It's a great, easy, hopefully easy site, easy address to remember for any of your E-rate questions. But with that, I do again want to thank everyone for joining, and Andrew, I'll turn it back on over to you.
All right, well, thanks so much, Dan. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So as we wrap up, I do want to thank John Harrington and Dan Rivera again for really an excellent presentation today. And I also want to thank Aruba for its support. And one final reminder to everyone, we will be sending out an email to everyone when the recording of the webinar is ready. So thank you, and this concludes today's webinar. Goodbye.